Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 10, Episode 108. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being here this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy Tuesday. You sound a lot crisper and cleaner now that you have a new headset. I hope to join you in that realm here in a couple of days.
Yeah, for those of hopefully I sound different. Hopefully I sound better. Let me know if the audio is better, but I do have a new headset, so hopefully things will be crisper and cleaner. And Dave, I think, is ordering the same headset. It'll be here next couple of days, so hopefully we'll sound in sync then. But
we're gonna sound like them dear professionals.
Yeah, right. We're gonna sound like the big time. Me and you, Dave.
After 11 years, 10 years, about time, huh?
Hey, better late than never. All right, a lot to talk about today. Nothing like super pressing in terms of a story. We're hitting the real dull period of the NFL in a normal year, and obviously this is anything but a normal year right now. No offseason workouts to really discuss too much, but I do want to discuss one thing to lead things off with Chuks Okorafor. And we know Okorafor is in a really big battle for what I assume is the right tackle spot in 2020 with Zach Banner. Again, assuming that Fowler kicks inside the left guard. But regardless, year 3, it's really a big year for him to show that he can be a starter in this league. And I thought he had an interesting tweet the other day, Dave. He sent out a tweet that said basically that his shoulder feels pain-free for the first time in a long time. We know he had shoulder surgery at the end of, I think, 2018 it was, and I guess it never really fixed whatever issue plagued him. And he had a really disappointing 2019, but if he's healthy now, and he says that he is, then that's going to bode well for him to finally have a chance to claim a starting spot. Yeah,
and you would expect him to be able to claim that starting spot, right? I mean, you got a third-round draft pick tied up in this kid, and really all you've gotten out of him is basically that that start against Denver, right?
And the Rams last year,
and the Rams last year, but two starts right now. And that start going back against Denver, he had a lot of help in that game. It's really kind of hard to evaluate that. I mean, overall, it was okay, but I think if you drill down to it, you kind of see why it was okay there. And, it wasn't bad last year, I don't think, against the Rams either. But, man, you would really like with 2 years remaining on his rookie contract now for him to grasp that, to make some more starts there, and especially at the right tackle spot. And Lord knows you got enough kind of tackles on this roster right now, and you would hate to see this team have to make the tackle position a priority, if you will, this time next year. So part of that, being the case would be him stepping up this year. So yeah, I really look forward to. And look, we thought about this same time last year that there was a good chance that at worst he was going to be the backup, right? Be behind Matt Feiler, and lo and behold, we get to, we go through training camp and all, and do our final predictions and all like that, and you get to week 1 in the inactive list, and Zach Banner is active, and Chuks Okorafor is inactive.
Right. I thought that he would at least give Fowler a good push for even the starting right tackle job. That never materialized. So Okorafor, I think, I would classify him as maybe the most disappointing player coming out of the summer last year in Pittsburgh. And they really need Okorafor to do well. If he doesn't perform well this year and loses another battle, then, he's year 3. He's developed enough. He was raw coming out, sure, but he's not raw anymore. And that's going to send some serious red flags for his future in Pittsburgh. And as you said, I mean, you really need Okorafor to do well because you got a lot of other tackle problems too, potentially in terms of free agency with Banner, with Fowler, with Villanueva, free agents after this year. If you add on top of that Okorafor not being an answer to one of those spots, that's another issue you have to take care of. So Okorafor has to do well. It's going to help his team in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely.
It's
good to hear that the shoulder, isn't bothering him. So, I mean, he's out of excuses now, right?
I'm just curious. I mean, he had the surgery, and was the surgery botched? Did it just not fix the issue? I mean, these are questions none of us have answers to. I just like to know the backstory, because he had surgery and things seem to get worse, which is obviously not how that's supposed to go.
Right.
I do want to talk about some other young guys. Another young guy. This is a second-year player. We've talked about him a little bit with UG3 linebacker. I think one of the big winners out of the draft where they haven't addressed the position, and I think he's in a strong position to see some level of playing time this year, knowing he's just one snap away when injury inevitably happens with either Devin Bush or Vince Williams. And I did a video yesterday on Steelers Depot just to kind of go through half dozen plays of his preseason to show why I'm excited about him in 2020 and why at the time there was a lot of excitement about him in general. And I think that was a good reminder because it's easy to forget that stuff when he missed the back half of last year with a back injury. So assuming that back injury is okay, and I have no reason to believe it's not, and he's fine right now, I think UG3 could be a real sleeper and take a big sophomore leap.
Boy, obviously too, with you obviously like to have the offseason program intact this offseason for the sheer fact that every team needs it. But on top of it, not only not having your rookies not be able to go through some semblance of an offseason program on the field work, your key second year guys. It'd be nice to have those guys involved in that too, and obviously Ulysees Gilbert III being in that group of players. And look, I mean, there was reason to be optimistic about him coming out of training camp and most definitely the preseason last year. And then you get into the season last year, and he's doing what you would expect him to do, and that's contribute on special teams. And at one point was either I think tied for or leading the team in special teams tackles the time that back injury hit him, and then he missed that game, and you kind of thought, okay, he's going to just miss a game with that back injury maybe and then come back. Well, that back injury evidently got worse, and then obviously needed to go to IR and everything along with that. But fast forward to the draft this year, they didn't address the position, which there was only you only had so many darts to throw at a certain amount of positions there that you needed. So at least it does show a little bit of confidence, I think, that they think he could provide this team some good depth there. But on the flip side, I'm not sure how many snaps they can expect Vince Williams to take there. I mean, obviously they had brought in Mark Barron free agency last year, and he played a good amount of snaps last year, and now he's obviously gone after 1 year, and that leaves you back with Vince Williams in there, and Vince isn't getting any younger. You obviously look, I like Vince's play against the run. I mean, nobody will take on a pulling guard or stick his nose up in that gap to take on a fullback like Vince Williams. But where you get a little bit concerned there is still the things that kind of hampered him coming out of college was the lateral kind of movement there, and then obviously covering people in space. So you would think at some point during this upcoming season that you would see that other more agile, athletic linebacker joining Devin Bush on the field, and maybe Ulysees Gilbert III can be that guy.
So how would you envision that working? Because I think we both agree that, in base, it'll be Devin Bush. I think Bush was going to be your every down linebacker this year, almost 100% of the time kind of guy. And Vince obviously is going to thrive in base. So you're saying in nickel, could he get pulled off? Because in nickel, obviously, that's kind of still your default base defense these days, and teams can run the ball just as often as they'll throw it at 11 personnel.
An good opposing quarterback and offensive coordinator is going to find your weakness in your defense. And he... if he's on the field in those type of situations, he's probably going to be one of the things that they're gunning after. So I don't know if you're going to use an extra defensive back in that situation. I mean, look, make no mistake about it. Brooks might be that hybrid guy with the intentions, but he's not going to be ready. No. I don't think so. That kind of rules him out. I mean, who else you going to get in there? Other than maybe UG3. So
do you spin Edmonds down? I know there's been a little speculation on that.
I mean, but who are you going to put back in the back end back there,
Yeah, that's a fair point. It could be if another safety were to emerge. I mean, it could be Cam Sutton trying to find ways to get him on the field, not a prototypical strong safety, but in some specialty package stuff. I don't know. I mean, I'm just asking. I mean, I guess the question is, you have, if we assume that Bush is the 1,000 snap guy, you basically got to replace probably 700 snaps from base and nickel from another linebacker next to Devin Bush. And, do you give Vince all 700 of those, or do you figure a way to divvy it up?
I don't want to see 700 of them. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
Out of Vince, I think that's the best way to answer that. I think they would be better served not to give all those snaps to Vince. How's that?
So when would you not play? You play him in your base defense, I assume. You play.
Oh yeah. I mean, obviously, and against opposing heavy packages and those kind of things for sure.
Yeah.
But when you get into 2-minute situations, when you get into obvious third down, second and long and third and long situations,
You're probably in dime in those situations.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, if it's 3rd and 10, Steelers.
Well, I mean, but what I'm saying is he's not going to be on the field.
Right, but you're not. You don't have to replace him with another, UG3 because you're not going to have another inside linebacker on the field.
But you're talking about the snaps that he won't be on the field for is what I'm getting.
Right.
At.
Well, I'm saying, there's let's say 1,000 snaps total. 300 of those are in dime, so Vince, there's no replacement for Vince because you're just not part of the package. So you got 300 in base, let's say, and then you got 400 in nickel, and you don't want to play all 400 snaps in nickel for Vince. So I'm just wondering,
no, absolutely not.
So what situations in nickel would you not play Vince Williams?
I think when you see depends on the offensive personnel. If you see,
let's assume they're in 11 because if most teams are in 11, you're usually in nickel when someone's in 11 personnel, 3 receiver set.
Then I would go matchup and worries about maybe some of those opposing tight ends or whatnot, or backs out of the backfield.
Would you play Vince in nickel at all, or do you think he's just strictly a base defense kind of guy, which is essentially what he was last year?
And that's where I'm going with this. I don't want to see him on the field much more than I have to. Outside of base. I think 500 snaps is pushing it with him. But I think you're going to open yourself up to his weaknesses more. The more you get him in, more you have him on the field. I mean, look, this team obviously brought in Barron for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So although he was too expensive to keep for what he was giving you, let me ask you right now: if you still had those two players on the roster right now at the same price, who are you putting on the field?
I would put Vince. I think the team would put Barron. That's obvious based on what they did last year. But I didn't see much of a difference between the two in coverage, and I think Vince was better pass rusher and better run defender.
Okay.
But we'll see. It is a question mark because, is this team going to ramp up Vince's snaps, or are they going to try to find multiple, different ways to try to plug it? And that's, I think, a really good question.
I think you're setting yourself up for an easy pick-on candidate there. The more snaps you play Vince.
Yeah, fair enough. But I do love him against the run. I love the tone setter. And as a blitzer, it's hard to find a better off-ball pass rusher, I think, in football than Vince Williams.
Well, look, he'll destroy opposing running backs.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that. We know that. There are so many things that Vince does do good still that he'll continue to do good.
Right. And while I don't think his coverage skills are elite, I don't think he's this massive liability out there either.
Yeah, I still don't want him running open in the open grass with some people.
Yeah. We'll see though, but if UG3 again, I think he'll play at some point this year, whether that's some sort of package carved out for him or initially, or injuries just elevating his snap count. Because I think he's one snap away, and I'm excited to see more of him and to see how he does his preseason and this summer.
And look, if you're not going to have this offseason program and you're going to go straight into training camp, it's going to be hard to get UG3 the snaps necessary. You're going to go with the guy you trust that is going to probably be in the right spot. More than anything, and Vince right now is that guy, so UG3 has to show and gain the trust to be able to get on the field in those situations, and it just does not look like there's going to be time for him to do that. Now, could he do that as the season goes on? Will injury, God forbid, dictate that he has to get on the field? Those are always possibilities. But I think in a even balance kind of situation here, you're going to have to slowly have him chip away, I think, at some of Vince's snaps as the season goes on. I don't think it's going to be a full bore. All right, 1 week we have Vince in there, getting these snaps, and then the next week you have Gilbert. I think you're going to have to pick and choose your spots, other than something drastically happened during training camp outside of injury that shows that that UG3 that you have the trust in him to be that guy in those certain situations.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not sure that that he'll have time to do so. That,
Mm-hmm.
and look, everybody says, "Well, Dave, you're down on UG3." No, I'm not. I mean, I haven't seen some of the things that Alex has seen, and people expect me to project him, to be, kind of what would you label him on breakout player or?
Yeah, but breakout player, sleeper, just underrated guy.
I mean, how are you even going to get him those snaps if you don't take him away from Vince?
Yeah, well, that's the question. I don't know. My thought really initially is I probably wouldn't work too hard to take away those snaps from Vince initially, but I think injury will just naturally open the door because I don't think those guys are going to just stay healthy all season long. Someone inevitably is going to go down.
All right, so you're going to go. He becomes kind of the sleeper player or breakout player by the injury default.
Well, I think he's just going to have a really good camp in preseason again and remind people why we were all excited about him in August last year. I'm not saying that it is going to translate to Sundays immediately. I just think he's going to have a really good preseason camp. Second-year guy, while he's going to miss out on some of this key stuff, still just going through this process before it's going to help him like it helps any player physically and mentally. So I just think he's going to have a really good summer whenever camp starts up.
And look, it was hard not to get a little excited about him coming out of, because look, he started way buried on the depth chart there in that first game. Who was that first game against? Tampa? Last year, preseason game. And then, quickly, Tomlin recognized his play, and then, he got moved up immediately to, I think it was the third string or second string after that, and then, obviously continued to show up on the tape there. But even so, we have yet to see this kid play a NFL regular season snap, so, we're still in, at least I am still in the projection stage for him. So it might be easier for you to say he's a breakout candidate, but you've seen him a lot more in the training camp setting. Now, of those 5 or 6 plays that you pulled out on the tape, which one do you think I found? Which one do you think I found to be the most impressive of the lot that you put on that tape?
Well, just to start with, I agree. I think it's a projection, too. I think there's a risk involved in evaluating him because you haven't seen him on defense. So I don't want to say that I think I'm basically in the same camp as you. You got to take risks on some guys, and that's a guy I think I have enough to make an educated guess on. To your question about which play you like the most, I would guess the run stop against Tennessee.
You would be correct. Yeah,
right.
I really thought that showed a lot of recognition, patience, playing within the defense, if you will. Keith Butler always used to say about Ryan Shazier, sometimes he'd slip through those gaps and make those fantastic plays, but dadgummit, sometimes he wouldn't stay in his, stay in his right gap and all like that. And if you're going to be an effective team, especially against the run on a snap by snap basis, you've got to have people playing the defense right, and all 11 of them playing it right too, because you get one guy out of the wrong gap, and then you have what happened against Dallas a couple years ago, right? Jarvis Jones, and that was, to me, the most impressive play. Now, look, the interception and all, against Tampa Bay, I thought that was good as well too. But I think the thing that got me most excited was that run stop with him, sliding along with the and mirroring the running back there, and then avoiding the trash, which he very well could have easily got caught up in with a false one false step. In that situation or hesitation, he gets swallowed up by that guard. Yep. And he didn't. He continued to flow to the outside there. He scraped over the outside, went in, got into a tiny crease right in there, met the running back in the hole, and a fine form tackle on that. So yeah, that was the play. In case anybody hasn't seen it yet, it's obviously up on the site. It's only 5 or 6 plays in there, and one of them's a special teams field goal block. Go give that a look, and you can see exactly why Alex is excited for UG3.
Yeah, just about a 5-minute video. It's a pretty short thing to skim through. I think his run fits were excellent, and you better be able to have good run fits and do your job, as Keith Butler would say, against the run, because that's where everything starts. My favorite play, though, I think, was the interception. And not only because the interception itself, which was that 2-point conversion against Tampa Bay, against that empty set, it was what he did after the pick, where he gets up and starts running. I know that's a really small thing, and maybe I'm overhyping it, but it's your first NFL game ever, and you're making that play, and it's an exciting moment. It's a 2-point conversion, kind of a specialty situation, and you still have the the presence of mind, the ball awareness to get up and start running, not like in college where you're down by contact. He understands that right away. So it's just those little things that shows me this dude's got a good football IQ, that he's heady, that he's alert, he's aware, and also just overall as a tackler. I thought he was a really good tackler last year in the preseason. Look, at Akron, he was an inconsistent tackler. That to me was his biggest issue. He really cleaned things up last year, and that's going to be really critical for him going forward.
I wish I could find what Tomlin said about him right after that first game. In fact, wait a minute, I think I may have found it.
I know he was singing his praises. I don't know exactly.
This was right after. Let's see. While recapping, he was talking about Justin Lane's Friday night play against Buccaneers, which I believe that was atrocious.
It's the opposite of UG3.
Tomlin also briefly. This was from a post I think I did on August 13th. Here he was asked to give his evaluation. No, where is it? I just lost my spot here. I mentioned the stellar play in that game of another one of the team's 2019 draft picks, inside linebacker Ulysees Gilbert III, who registered 3 total tackles, 1.5 sacks, 4 quarterback hits, a forced fumble in the 46 total defensive snaps that he was on the field for. The Akron product also intercepted a 2-point conversion pass attempt late in Friday night as well. And here's what Tomlin said about him. You also take another guy like Ulysees who made a lot of splash plays, but I pointed out to the team those plays were made between play 80 and 89 defensively. So the people that he was on the field with were not the quality of people that Justin Lane was on the field with. So there's sort of a backhanded, kind of a dig.
Little backhanded compliment.
Yeah, a little backhanded compliment there, and kind of a dig, I guess, too, or protection of Justin Lane a little bit. So we better not read too much into quality of performance. We all better just keep our heads down and keep working, and that's what the group intends to do. Justin Lane included.
Yeah, I think that was mostly protection of Lane because Lane never started that game. There was injuries. He's the left cornerback. First game, he gets torched early, and I think Tom's just saying, UG3 made his plays later in the game against backups, and Lane was playing against, first and second string competition. But still, I think UG3 had a great game and then cemented his roster spot against Carolina with that field goal block. So this is a 6th-round pick that earned his spot, played well, earned his keep on special teams, was leading the team in special team snaps before going down with that back injury. Obviously, he'll maintain that role in 2020. I'm just excited for his future, excited to watch him in camp.
Yeah, most definitely. Look, I mean, you look at behind Vince Williams and Devin Bush right now. It's UG3. It's Robert Spillane, and I mean, that's it right now. Obviously you got Leo Lewis and John Houston Jr., who heck of a tackler, I think, but really didn't make a lot of splash plays at USC there. So maybe you're gonna be looking at one of those guys having maybe an outside shot at the 53. More than likely, one of those guys is going to land on the practice squad as we sit here right now.
Dave, speaking of young players, let's talk about rookies. And you did a great study. And we've mentioned it briefly, but you were able to do the deep dive into the numbers of the rookie class of 2011. That's probably the best way to try to compare and set expectations for 2020. Because while obviously the circumstances that surround this year are very different than any year before, this is not the first year the NFL has lost its spring and summer workouts, OTAs and mini camps and the like. That happened in 2011 because of the CBA lockout, where the season didn't really start until August. Even the Hall of Fame game was canceled in 2011. So it's a good way to compare and contrast what the rookie class of 2011, their impact was. You did the study into that, so I'll let you have the floor and talk about what you found.
Well, yeah, let's go back to just what were we talking about on Friday? Talking about this class and how it's going to be hard for them because of this situation to see much playing time and contribute. And lo and behold, over the weekend, Mike Tomlin was talking, met the media midway through the weekend to talk about the virtual rookie minicamp that's going on, and he said this class is going to be affected by these circumstances. It'll be fair given that this class globally certainly will be affected by these circumstances. Not only the Pittsburgh Steelers rookies, but all rookies throughout the National Football League. I'm sure it's going to affect their ability in some instances to participate and the amount of participation and contribution. But we'll all understand the ramifications of that as we walk the journey. And until then, I don't waste a lot of time worrying about what that might be. So, I mean, there it is in black and white, straight out of Tomlin's mouth that these kids missing all this offseason is going to affect them. Some obviously more than others. The good thing is a lot of kids in this class are going to be on this field because of special teams ability, and I think that's a huge win. At least you're going to get those guys contributing in some form or fashion. Now, when you go back to 2011, you had the lockout and all. A lot of people forget your draft class that year was Cameron Hayward, Marcus Gilbert, Curtis Brown, Cortez Allen, Chris Carter, Keith Williams, and Baron Batch. Well, Baron Batch was lost right out of the chute in training camp to a knee injury. Keith Williams, the guard out of where was he out of Nebraska?
Yep.
Yeah. Didn't even make the practice squad out of camp in preseason that year. So that left you with Hayward, Gilbert, Curtis Brown, and Cortez Allen and Carter all made the 53-man roster as rookies. Only two of them, Cameron Hayward and Gilbert, went on to play, I guess what you'd call a considerable amount of snaps during the 2011 season. And both really, if you remember back, only did so because of injuries to the starters ahead of them. Marcus Gilbert went on to play, believe it or not, 814 total regular season snaps for the Steelers during his 2011 rookie year. And really, you have to think he only did so because Willie Colon, remember in that season opener against the Baltimore Ravens, he tore his triceps in week 1. He was your starting right tackle that season, and if memory serves me, I think they had restructured his contract again ahead of that, so he wasn't going to go anywhere. I don't think at the time, talking about Cologne, and it was pretty much probably expected to be Gilbert. Plan probably was to get him maybe 100 snaps throughout the season there. Well, lo and behold, he had to play 814 of them as that season went on. And as for Cameron Hayward, he played not even 200 regular season snaps during his rookie year, 194. And once again, those came as a result of injury. People might remember that defensive end Aaron Smith suffered a season-ending foot injury in week 4 against Houston. And also Brett Kiesel missed time early in that season, like weeks 3 and 4 with a knee injury. 37 of Cam Hayward's 194 regular season snaps in 2011 came in weeks 3 and 4 when Aaron Smith and Kiesel both went down, and he logged all of 99 snaps in the Steelers' first 9 games that season. So 99 snaps really in the first half of the season, and a little less than 100 in the second half of the season, if you will. And that was with people banged up around him. Because, I think Casey Hampton was banged up a little that year. I'm trying to think who else was on that team that might have been a little banged up.
Obviously, Smith and Kiesel missed.
Right.
A decent amount of time.
Aaron Smith, from week 5 on was out. Looking at other members of that draft class as well, too. Obviously, Curtis Brown was a special teams guy all year. Cortez Allen played. How many snaps did he play? Oh, Chris Carter ended up playing 42 total defensive snaps during that rookie season, and no one saw that coming. But weeks 5 through 8, the Steelers had lost James Harrison and Jason Worlds to injuries. Remember Harrison broke the orbital bone?
Yeah.
And remember, we had, because Worlds and Harrison were out, we had Lawrence Timmons having to take some outside linebackers snaps there. Carter saw 42 total defensive snaps in a span of weeks 5 through 8. Those are the weeks that Harrison and Worlds were out. He didn't sniff it outside of that. And Cortez Allen played 59 total regular season snaps in 2011 rookie season. That was with him being used sparingly as a kind of a slot dime defender, I think, by Dick LeBeau that year. One of those games was against New England when Allen logged like 19 snaps, mostly covering Rob Gronkowski in that situation. There were two undrafted free agents that, or at least one that saw a considerable amount of playing time that year. That was Wesley Saunders. Remember him, the tight end out of undrafted free agent tight end out of South Carolina. And that was almost by default because they had a huge gaping hole at the tight end depth chart that year. That was they lost Matt Spaeth to the Chicago Bears that offseason as a free agent. All they had was really Heath Miller there, and things were so bad. I don't know if you remember this. They signed veteran tight end John Gilmore after the lockout had ended. They're thinking that maybe he would come in to be that number 2 blocking tight end, and he was so bad he didn't make the 53. Wesley Saunders made it. Saunders went on to play 233 offensive snaps that season. Couple other undrafted, Corbin Bryant, John Clay saw playing time, very, very limited playing time during later on. Corbin Bryant was in there week 7 against Arizona for a handful of snaps because, once again, I think you had Hoke out. I think you had Aaron Smith out. You just had a lot of injuries during that week. John Clay played 20 snaps, final 2 games of the season at running back because Jonathan Dwyer and Mewaldy Moore were out with injuries there as well, too. If you go back to remember the Tebow playoff game against Denver, how can you forget that?
Unfortunately.
Chad Spann and John Clay were your backup running backs to Isaac Redman in that game there. So
what was the worst playoff roster running back room? That or Ben Tate and Dree Archer and Josh Harrison? What was that, 2015 against Baltimore, the wild card game?
Yes.
That's a good
not really. It would be the latter probably because at least Isaac Redman. At least Isaac Redman ran for something like 112 or 118 yards against Denver on I think it was 17 carries, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong on that, but
yeah. But Chad Spann's a name you mentioned yesterday. I had not heard that name since probably that year. It's a long time since I heard Chad Spann.
And John Clay, people only probably remember him because his first carry, which I think was against the Rams, went for a touchdown. You know?
Yeah, it's interesting with that class, and it seems like basically they only played because of injury, and also I blame Hayward not playing on that hideous 95 he was wearing that you pointed out. That is not the jersey for him.
No, he wore that only during the preseason.
It said only during the preseason. Okay,
right, because when he arrived in 2011, Jason Worlds had 97. And after that preseason was over, Worlds switched to 93 after wearing 97, I think, for one season. Because wasn't Worlds part of the 2010 draft class? So Worlds wore 97, I think, for one season, and then they got through
Who was wearing 93 the year before?
It might have been Eason, right?
Is it Nick Eason? Yeah. Okay. So that's what flipped it. Well, I think it was a bad omen for Hayward to start with that 95. Now, I think it is at least worth pointing out that was in their old school philosophy of how they used rookies, where they just didn't play him unless they had to. But still, I think obviously the lockout had serious implications, and you can compare 2011 to what's going to happen in 2020.
Yeah, there was other injuries throughout the season on that defensive line, and it still made it hard for Hayward to see considerable playing time. You know, and I think even in a recent interview that he's done, he talked about, they show up to training camp that year and your head's spinning,
Right.
And what makes it even kind of worse, I think, for this rookie class on top of it is, look, at least in 2011, that class could go to a gym and work out, right? They couldn't go to a team facility and do that, but at least they could go to the local gym or local YMCA or whatever and hit the weights, right? This year's class, if they don't have it at home, or if they don't have a friend that has it at home or whatever, then they're SOL. And that's one thing that stuck out to me when Carlos Davis met the media this past week is they asked him, how are you keeping your strength up? And they said they don't have weights there. He said they have bands. They're using the bands. Well, look, I'm no Jack LaLanne. Do you don't know who Jack LaLanne is?
I assume someone who's strong.
Well, he's old. He was an old man. He's kind of a fitness guru. Jack LaLanne. He would pimp all those television products. Order now. And anyway, he was a fitness guru who kind of pimped workout things on TV there. But anyway, I'm no who's a modern day that you would understand modern day fit. Billy Banks. Do you know who Billy Banks is?
No. I get the concept. I won't get any name, but I get your point. It's hard for these guys to work out and build strengths in
right.
This.
I mean, look. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is look. I don't have all my bands laying around here, in my office, but I guarantee that probably hitting the weights is a little bit better than hitting the bands. I guess unless you're someone like Troy Polamalu who's really into the isometrics and things like that. So
don't you hit the bench press after each podcast? You're like the '70s Steelers right off the practice field. They go right to the bench press. That's you.
Yeah, I haven't been that guy since like 15 or 16, I think. And that guy was only around for just a little bit, So no.
Right,
I do try to at least kind of, depending on the time of the off season, try to walk a mile a day. So how's that?
Yeah,
so
hey, better. That's good. And time like this, walking, getting outside is certainly a good thing to do. But yeah, it's going to be such a challenging year in so many ways. That's why I think and I know the Colbert downplayed, but I still think at least subconsciously it had a factor. That's why they drafted 5 seniors, and they went pretty senior heavy in this class, guys that had more experience and had a little bit of an advantage as opposed to the underclassmen coming out. And then B, they got guys who can help on special teams right away because that's going to be their calling card in year one.
Yeah, I just worry about showing up to camp and these guys, because look, at least during rookie mini camp, these kids get a taste of it, and they can get the lecture, and I'm sure they've already gotten the lecture now. And Mike Tomlin, I know some teams are evidently putting having their players wear heart monitors or some sort of things where they can kind of monitor, I guess, what they do.
The Steelers aren't though. I think Claypool was asked about that, and they're not
right. And that's what I'm getting at. They're not going to hold their hands throughout this process. And I'm a fan. You shouldn't have to tell a kid that he has to work out and keep in condition. Here's what I wish would happen though. And maybe it has. And I'm not saying it hasn't happened just because we haven't heard about it. If I'm Cameron Hayward and I have this, and Cameron recently, I think, outfitted his house with his gym or whatnot, I think I would have a guy like Carlos Davis, a guy in my position group, come in and maybe not necessarily live with me, but maybe put him up at the Holiday Inn or what have you, and get this kid to come over and hit the weights with me, and kind of teach him that stuff, because these kids think that they know what's going on, and they don't. And I don't care if they're seniors or whatnot. I mean, they don't have a clue of what they're going to go through once training camp gets underway. And I think that's one of my biggest fears too, is these soft tissue injuries and these kids just not making it through training camp practice right off the get-go because they're not knowing the proper conditioning level, which isn't their fault. I mean,
sure.
And they haven't had a taste of there. So, yeah, will you have some that probably, am I overselling this to some degree? Probably. But I don't think it can be understated either.
No, I think it's a really good point. It's just one of those things, conditioning and just how to do those little things as a professional. You don't know until you know, and they just haven't had the opportunity to find that stuff out. And it's not only just conditioning, it's getting the right sleep, changing your diet. These guys who are in college, someone who recently graduated college, I'll tell you the diets I'm sure were not the best. How to, rehab and recover and rest and balance all those things, getting on the right plan with strength and conditioning coaches. I'm sure some of that's happening, but still it's hard to replicate when it's all done virtually and you haven't met these guys in person. So, there's just everything it takes to be a professional, all those things you have to learn and go through and kind of just learn from error and where you screw up, and you find that out pretty quickly when the NFL smacks you in the face. They haven't had the opportunity to do, and that's going to be another one of those challenges for this rookie class. It's going to make your life really tough on them.
Yeah, and then look, I know Garrett Guimont probably has emailed these kids to certain things that they need, but there's nothing like just being there with the group and going through it and hearing and getting the hands-on kind of stuff, that and being overseen with this kind of stuff as well too. And look, it's not the veterans' responsibility to flip the bill on this, but I think they could make it a little bit easier transition by showing other than just telling,
Yeah, I just again, there's logistical issues there with travel, and does these guys want to stay in a hotel and family stuff. So I hear what you're saying, but there's just a lot of stuff there. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that Garrett Guimont and Norwig and all of them are have a plan in place, but still, you see these guys in person, you see them in a stretch line. Okay, maybe this guy isn't as flexible in this one area or struggling in this one, part of his body. I don't know all the details of it, but you're just missing out on a lot of information clearly, and it's going to just impact this entire team.
I mean, you look back to even to last year with a guy like Deontay Johnson, who, we had that mysterious. We finally kind of understood it more as the season went on about, well, he wasn't right during, he wasn't 100% during rookie minicamp, I don't think,
right.
and then on into kind of the OTAs. What's kind of going on? How much is he actually participating? This, that, and the other. And we get to the back end of that season. He said, look, I had to. I had to struggle with how much, I had to make myself up my water intake, and, I hit the wall there, kind of the soft muscle, and he struggled with it, and he even had the full, gamut of the hands-on kind of stuff there last season there. So this is tough, making this jump from college to the professional level for a lot of these kids, understanding what's required from them just from a physical and training standpoint.
Mm-hmm. And a mental standpoint, too. That's a whole nother beast. Now, let me give you one very small silver lining, and you can jog my memory with what Deontay Johnson, what he went through. The one upshot here is at least these guys get a chance to rest, because in a normal year, that rookie year, they never stop. Like, they go college football, they finish their season, they declare, they have to train, then they have, combine, they got pro day, they got private visits, private workouts. They're still, of course, training during that time. Then you have the draft. 2 weeks later, your rookie minicamp, OTAs, minicamp. You get about a month, 6 weeks off. Then you're at training camp. You just never have a chance just to recharge. And so I think there's at least some value in these guys can rest, and all that work they put in since, August of last year, since before their final college football season. At least there's that benefit. I think that's honestly one reason why you see those sophomores take a leap for a variety of reasons, but at least they have that offseason to begin to rest and let their body recover, so you don't get tripped up by that nagging hamstring injury or soft tissue injury that Deontay basically had to battle through the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. Okay.
It doesn't outweigh all the negatives, but it is at least one small.
Right.
benefit.
Okay. All right. You have rookie minicamp off. Okay, and that helps you kind of recover.
Well, it's not just rookie. It's everything, because you have OTAs and
right.
minicamp.
But I'm saying, okay, I'll give them the rookie minicamp, but I much rather would have. I mean, that break needs to be over after rookie minicamp.
Well, yeah, like I said, it does not outweigh all the positives of having this experience of the offseason. But I'm just saying it's the one small silver lining where these guys can rest for a long period of time, which is going to help their bodies rehab and recover.
And look, this just isn't just the Steelers, as Mike Tomlin said,
sure.
and we're Steelers centric here, obviously, because that's what we do. But I mean, this is across the National Football League. All teams are equally going to struggle with this same thing. And once again, I circling it back to kind of being a positive here, in my opinion, kind of just like the 2011. Steelers is look, this is more of a veteran team that you're dealing with here, and especially kind of on the defensive side of the ball, if you will. I mean, if you look top to bottom, hopefully you're not asking your younger players to make huge impacts other than maybe special team contributions here. Now some are because of injuries, because that's just the way it happens. But for the most part, not having these off-season OTA practices and all for a team that's really as has as many veterans as the Steelers do. And look, even the guys that you brought in, Stephon Wisniewski, Derek Watt, Eric Ebron, all these guys have multiple years in the NFL. They know what to expect, and all three of those guys are on the offensive side of football, which you would think would be able to pick up a little bit easier. Probably the guy on the offensive side of ball of those three with the biggest disadvantage might be an Eric Ebron from a timing and working with Ben kind of standpoint there. But I'm not so much worried about those guys. And once again, I think if you boil this thing down as to teams that have kind of an advantage due to all this, what's happening this offseason with the coronavirus pandemic, the Steelers would be one of those teams I think kind of benefits the most because of them being a veteran team, because of them having continuity in the coaching staff, kind of aspect of it as well too. So I mean, in the long run, barring injuries really disrupting this team, yeah, I think it plays in the Steelers' favor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think those are some small silver linings to an otherwise obviously just chaotic year. So good discussion there. Good look back to 2011. By the way, where did you get those snap counts from? Because I tried to find them the other day. I could not find any resource for that.
We used to chart that stuff. Alan Gifford, rest in peace.
Oh wow, yeah.
Alan Gifford used
Back
to do charting way back then, and they're even on the site. Believe it or not, if you pull up, if you search offensive participation. I think in the search box there, I think you can go back and see some of those old charts. Way back when the Earth was cooling, we used to, and we used to have to do this off TV tape too.
Oh God. Well, I guess most of my charting is TV tape these days, so I guess it's not too different.
So that's how long we've been at it, especially on Steelers Depot, and trying to get this this kind of info. Now, obviously, the exact. There might be an error or two along in there, but I mean, for the most part, I think those numbers are on the money there.
Yeah, a snap or two is not going to make much of a difference. All right, Dave, the big thing I want to talk about today, and I promise I won't get on my soapbox too much, but I was thrilled that the question was finally asked for the first time this entire offseason, a nose tackle question.
Ooh.
How about that? Asked about the future and the current state of the Steelers nose tackle position and who the options are. Let me.
It's like someone saying that Bigfoot. It's plausible that Bigfoot exists, right?
What does that mean? What? I don't get the comparison.
Tomlin's comments kind of it makes it plausible that the nose tackle position still exists, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I hear you. That and the Loch Ness Monster. But Tomlin says, "quote It's no question that we have some candidates. Obviously, that's a position
Do you know what Bigfoot is?"
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've gone on the rabbit hole of all that conspiracy stuff.
Okay.
I could talk about UFOs for you for an hour and a half.
Okay. I was a little bit worried there. You might not know what Sasquatch or Bigfoot is. Okay.
Do you think Bigfoot really exists? Do you think? I mean, because some people have faked it and they've just been a guy in a costume with a giant cast foot.
Could there be some sort of creature out there that we can't explain, like Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster? Yeah, I think it's plausible.
Yeah. Where you at in UFOs?
Oh, most definitely. Jeez, I mean, just look at that most recent.
The Pentagon.
Yeah, that. How do you explain? Look, what does UFO stand for?
Yeah. Well, I guess I would say it in the conventional, aliens. Other beings from another planet.
Look, you just watch Close. You never watched Close Encounters of the Third Kind as a kid, did you?
Nope.
Go watch that.
I don't know. I like the here and now, and that Pentagon tape was really interesting. Yeah, because that you just can't explain that kind of stuff.
I mean to hear those pilots kind of talking there, right? I mean, all right.
And it's just gone. I mean, it just anyway.
Also, look, I mean, I'm a firm believer in Phil Mogg and Michael Schreckner, and
who are those guys?
They were in UFO, the band.
Oh, all right.
I'm a huge UFO fan on top of it there, too. And hopefully our older generation has listened to UFO. If not, put on that discography of UFO. That's some good old rock and roll for you right there. Okay, let's carry on.
Quality dad joke you made there. Anyway, so let me restart Tomlin's quote here about nose tackle. Quote, It's no question that we have some candidates. Obviously, that's a position that was manned by Javon Hargrave for a number of years. Last year, he was backed up by Dan McCullers. He's still on our roster. We've added some young men in this process. We have some veteran guys that are nose capable, like Tyson Alulu. So we're comfortable with the men that we have to work with. We'll sort those guys out and allow those guys to establish themselves within the position. We're not opposed to adding to the position if we come across some capable men or a capable man between now and then. So that's the gist of Tomlin's comments. Basically saying McCullers mentions Alulu, and as I think we mentioned this before, that obviously McCullers was always going to be in the mix. He's the true nose tackle on the roster, and that after Colbert seemed to downplay the idea of Wormley shifting there, that Alulu seemed to be the most next logical option to potentially play inside.
Look, we keep throwing it out there, 30% of the snaps, and what's the average over the last, 2 or 3 years?
317 snaps over the last 4 years.
I mean, we don't need to continue to beat that dead horse, but people saying that people saying that it doesn't matter are off base. You got to have somebody in there that that you're confident with, especially, against the run. And I thought Tomlin did a good job saying, look, in today's NFL, when it comes to that position, you'd like to have somebody that can also function as one of your two down defensive linemen, in sub package. Now, is that the case? Is that going to be the case all the time? Look, I mean, you could throw Dan McCullers in the middle of that thing as a nose tackle against the run and maybe be okay. But I mean, is he really going to offer you much of anything as a sub package, player? Probably not, right?
No, I mean, he can collapse the pocket, if he gets one-on-one with an undersized center. But,
right.
Obviously he's not a guy that's going to play much of sub.
He can push him back to the parking lot. But,
yeah.
And look, blessed, I am a huge fan of what Tyson Alualu did for this team in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't think people talk about that performance enough. With his play last year. But do we want to see that, do we want to see him have to be that guy in the middle of those many snaps?
Yeah, he's never really done it before. I mean, on a baseline level, there's a skill set there. I mean, he's he's like 6'2", so he's not normally that's 6'5", so there's a height more that's friendlier to playing interior. He plays good, competent run defense as a 3-tech, as a 4-eye. I mean, it could be a little different on the interior. I mean, it could, I guess, do a serviceable job, but it still might not be good enough. But it was just good to at least hear the answer, to hear some different names thrown around, and at least just have something to talk about in regards to that position. And I don't want to get on my soapbox because you guys have heard me talk about it enough, and that, yes, the position is devalued, but no, it's not dead. I think we've proven that. But it's still a hole, and I think there's still some question marks about who's going to be the actual answer there, and not only who the answer is, but how well are they going to play.
Absolutely, and they didn't rule out, that along with safety is probably two positions to watch as we get closer to the start of the regular season here. And if Colbert was going to trade or add somebody, maybe a late cut or something along those lines, that might kind of be the guy there. Now, look, there's going to be a couple guys I think still sitting out there, Snacks Harrison and Mike Daniels and all. But I mean, they're not going to spend a lot of money on that position for those kind of guys,
Mm-hmm.
And once again, how much versatility do those guys have? That's the other thing. And look, I mean, Chris Wormley is another guy that we've talked about. Yeah, he looks good against the run. Yeah, he played very, very few snaps as kind of a true nose tackle in his short time in the league already there. But to kind of estimate him being that guy is just that. It's an estimation right now.
Well, and Colbert just seemed to downplay it. He said that he doesn't really expect him to be that guy in base, and he'd play end in base, not nose tackle, and Tomlin didn't really mention him there. So I'm not going to say it's impossible, and they may have to just rotate guys and throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And there's some value in maybe playing him inside, but there's no indication that's going to be the case. Until
further notice, and we've said this for several weeks now, it's Dan McCullers in the middle of that thing in base until further notice.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's been 6 seasons as a backup, and all of a sudden he's a starter by default, and that's the guy you want to roll with. Not how I'd go about it, but
not how I would either. But, I think Mike Daniels has a few more snaps in him. If you could get.
Isn't he over 30 though? Isn't he over that magic 30 number?
Yeah, but I mean, when you look, but when you look at guys brought in, if Colbert was going to get move past one of the things that he normally doesn't do, it would be for a minimum salary.
Yeah, I guess would Daniels take it? Maybe not. I don't think Snacks would, but I know you're not talking about him. May
5th he turned 31.
Yeah, I mean the history says it's not there. I know that's the first thing I look at with a defensive player is how old is he. But if he is minimum salary, maybe those things, those rules, quote unquote, get lessened a bit, and you can look past that stuff.
And I think the further you get into past the outside, because all those studies that I've done have been prime free agency too.
Mm-hmm. Right, true. I did briefly look at some run defense numbers, and these are just the raw numbers. They're just stats, and they don't tell you the whole story. I want to, interest of full disclosure. With Hargrave on the field, the Steelers allowed 3.7 yards per carry. I excluded goal line snaps from that just because they can kind of skew the numbers in terms of the yards per carry. So 3.7 with Hargrave on the field, with McCullers on the field. This is just last year, by the way, just 2019. McCullers 4.2 yards per carry. So a pretty big difference there. I did go a step further because your voice was in my head, Dave. I need to be talking about run success rates with those guys.
That's what matters.
And they actually are pretty similar. So in the interest of fairness here and just the numbers, Hargrave's run success rate, and again, this is not like Hargrave alone determines the success rate when he's on the field for the defense. But anyway, the defensive run success rate when Hargrave was on the field was 56%. With McCullers, it was 54.4%. So pretty similar. I will grant him that, and at least in that statistical way to look at it.
Were all those in base?
This was total. This was just all run snaps. I broke it down by down too, first, second, third downs. First down, actually, McCullers did better than Hargrave. McCullers was 67.5% on first down. Hargrave just under 60%. On second down, though, McCullers was 34.8%. Hargrave was 54%, for whatever that's worth.
I would like it. I'd like to see it, and I could probably use your charting numbers. I'll just pull up your chart on this, on what it was in base with both those guys in the middle.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because that's kind of what we're talking about here. But maybe that's something we'll get together stat wise for a post here at some point here.
Yeah, so just some interesting stuff there. I still think McCullers is limiting. I mean, they didn't do as many run stunts last year as they did 2 years ago, but obviously you really can't do any sort of stunting with McCullers just because the guy's not mobile enough to scrape or shoot a gap, and Hargrave and other guys could. So we'll see.
And also the selection. What did I say was the total snap count? I put on Twitter the other day about the 300 something snaps. How many of those was Hargrave in base in the middle?
I forget what the number was, 240, 260.
Hold on, I'll tell you here.
It was two something. I don't remember what the exact number was. But yeah, I mean, again, I don't mean to belabor the point, but 3-4 base is still valuable. You're in an AFC North that is tight end.
Look, I mean, you're going to play the Tennessee Titans this year, right? And what are they going to try to do to the Steelers this year?
They're going to run the ball with Derrick Henry. Yeah.
I mean, there are going to be certain teams this year that you better make sure that your run defense is up to par on.
I just look at your AFC North opponents. I mean, I mentioned this before. You got Chubb and Ingram, Lamar Jackson. The Ravens just drafted Justice Hill, Joe Mixon in Cincinnati, and then the tight ends too. The Baltimore was trading away tight ends. They had so many. You got in Cleveland, you have Njoku, and they just signed Austin Hooper, so they're going to run multiple tight end sets. In Cincinnati, they drafted Drew Sample in the second round last year. They got your guy, CJ Uzomah. How do you say his last name? I forget. But you got multiple tight ends. It's going to be a tight end run game heavy AFC North. You better have a base defense to stop it.
Let's see here. 312 total plays in base with 3 defensive linemen on the field. 242 of those were Hargrave. That left just 70 for McCullers with 3 defensive linemen on the field that he played.
Yeah, so it'd be a big jump in snap count too if McCullers is going to be the guy. I mean, not to 1,000, but if he goes to 300, 400, that's a pretty substantial upgrade. Mm-hmm. And you worry about some conditioning and some other things. But we'll see. It was good to at least get those guys on the record with a question that was finally asked, I think, long overdue. Mm-hmm. All right, Dave, you've also looked at some undrafted free agents. We talked about a couple of them on Friday's show. You have Joe Corey to give you the numbers on some of the contracts for all but 2 of the remaining undrafted free agents. And it seems like Ole Miss defensive lineman Josiah Coatney is likely to have the biggest signing bonus of all of the Steelers' 10 undrafted free agents.
Yeah, at $15,000, and it's probably the second place. I don't think is even going to be close to that. I still lack 2 more players. Hopefully I'll have those by the end of the day there, but Josiah Coatney, $15,000 signing bonus. Christian Montano, the center out of Tulane, $2,500 signing bonus. Spencer Knight, a fullback out of Auburn, $2,500 signing bonus. That's cheap, man. This is a cheap signing bonus right there. But in total, we're up to $63,000. 8 players given $63,000 in signing bonus. The final number is $80,000, if I'm not mistaken. That means $17,000 left to split. I just got to find a breakdown between. Who are the two that I have left here?
Calvin Taylor and Leo Lewis.
Yeah, those are the two that I need to find a breakdown on, but I believe those two total out at $15,000. So $80,000 signing bonuses spent on 10 players.
Yeah, I just wish they would do things a little differently. It's a source of frustration, but again, I don't mean to do my greatest hits episode today and rant about all the things I've ranted about in the past. Jay Glazer, funny story there. We didn't even talk about it too much because I just thought it was such a silly story to begin with. But, last week he was taking some shots at Ben, making fun of his offseason workout program and how his workout is basically do a session of yoga, play some golf, drink some beer. And apparently Ben heard that and wasn't too happy. And he and Glazer had a conversation. And so Glazer had to do the old Michael Jackson moonwalk and backtrack. And I forget exactly all that he said, but basically was just saying, that, he wasn't really being literal, or kind of was, but kind of wasn't being literal with Ben. And that this year, at least, Roethlisberger's rehab has totally changed. And he's really focused on conditioning and cardio and getting in shape. So it was just a silly internet story. And Glazer, I think, looked kind of dumb for talking about it.
Yeah, look, all this started from Glazer doing a chat in The Athletic, and I think his preface was, or what he's trying to say his preface was, look, Ben's off-season workouts have in the past have included a hot yoga session, which I don't even know what hot yoga is. Hot yoga followed by beer and golf, and that's the way he tried to walk this thing back the other day on the radio, saying, "Look, let's be honest here. Ben's off-season regiments in the past haven't been all that." But anyway, he got him and Ben evidently talked briefly because Ben has been catching a lot of hell from people saying he's not treating his rehab properly, and Ben made it a point to tell Glazer, look, I'm rehabbing this thing, and that's the point that Glazer wanted to get across is, yeah, Ben is rehabbing this the way he's supposed to. And
yeah,
look, we're going to get into training camp, and Ben's going to have that beard shaved, and people going to say, oh, look, he finally heeded the fans' advice and got into shape, all because he's shaved. Look, I mean, if you have to question it at this point, look, he's a big dude anyway, I mean, they don't call him Big Ben for nothing. I mean, on top of it, I'm not a bit worried about it. I'm just, the only thing, I will worry about Ben and that elbow when I'm given a reason to worry about Ben and that elbow.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, a little fair to Glazer, I mean, Ben in past off seasons has talked about how he really doesn't do much in the off season. He'll never throw in an off season, except for maybe if he's got the guys, at vacation spot or whatever in Georgia. But that's about it. But this year is different. He's talked about that, how he's really focused on cardio because he missed the whole season. He has the opportunity to attack it. His rest of his body feels good and all that. And then plus for the people that were making fun of him, and it's the internet and who cares? And that's what people do. And I'm not mad about it. But, this is a Hall of Fame quarterback with Super Bowl rings to his name. If that's what the results are, then I don't care what his offseason program is. So it was just all silly in the first place.
Look, you go back to a couple years ago, and forget how many. I think it was wasn't it just Rudolph's? Was it Rudolph's rookie season or the year before that, where they were in training camp and they were throwing the bags at Ben, dropping back. Remember that video? And he's just he's swatting those bags off, those pads off, and all like that. And all. He looked great, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from a physical standpoint, looked great. And look. Judge him however you want to. I'll worry when I have a reason to worry about Ben, I'll worry about Ben.
Yeah, I mean, he is kind of an easy target for the media in that regard. And I will say when it comes to training camp moments, I still remember that picture with the ice packs like all over his entire body, his arms, his legs, his knees. And so that one still makes me laugh. And, that's kind of where the stereotype that he's lazy or totally broken down comes from. But I think a lot of that is not accurate. And again, the results speak for themselves. So whatever he's doing seems to be working pretty well for him. All right, Dave. Speaking of media types, Peter Schrager of Good Morning Football has declared the Steelers as the AFC's most dangerous defense in 2020, and honestly, it's hard to disagree with that assessment.
Yeah, look, when you look, we already talked about how much of a veteran team this team is shaping up to be in 2020. And when you look at who they lost on the defensive side of football this offseason, Hargrave and Mark Barron for the most part. I mean, yeah, they lost Dirty Red and Sean Davis went elsewhere, but I mean, when you look at starters and guys that contributed a lot of snaps there, obviously Hargrave's going to be a tough guy to replace. I mean, the guy really played well, his final 2 years, and significantly last year as well too. And it's gonna be a tough player. And you hope Stephon Tuitt coming back and staying healthy, and picking up where he left off when he got injured last year against the Chargers. Because make no mistake about it, Tuitt was dominating. He was probably the best player on defense, right? Through
That's what I said.
Through 6 weeks last season before he went down injured there. And obviously people are going to say, well, yeah, that's fine, but if he can't stay healthy all season, then what good is that? Well, yeah, fine. Well, we get that. But assuming he does come back and picks up where he left off last year, that'll at least help you alleviate the loss of Javon Hargrave. Mm-hmm. Now, Barron, say what you will, Alex and I just had a long conversation at the start of this podcast about what's going to happen there, and that'll obviously be a question mark. Playing alongside Devin Bush, who, by the way, is another year experience now, should you would expect make that second year jump, if you will, in that defense. Your secondary is all going to be back again. Minka's got a full year or almost a full season underneath his belt. You probably expect him to move around a little bit more in that defense as well too. And let's not forget, this is a defense last season that, believe it or not, people forget too. They got off to kind of a slow start, right? The Steelers defense last season, New England, and then didn't play the best against Seattle. This started, you had Mika show up, and they had the 5 turnover game against San Francisco, but still in that key moment, Mark Barron against San Francisco, they ran that kind of that hurry up there towards the end. But if the Steelers offense don't fumble away that football with James Conner late in that game, probably a win there. But for the most part, through the first 4 or 5 games, I think last season, that defense, it took a while for that to gel, but once they did, and we're talking about a defense that ended up leading the league in sacks last year. We're talking about a defense that led the league in takeaways, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and you got a lot of those guys coming back. Most of that unit's coming back this year, and you would hope that your backups are will be fine this year once again, and hopefully injuries don't strike. But I guess in so many words, I come the end of the 2020 season, if we're not looking at an injury ravaged defense, there's no reason to think that this unit won't be top 1 or 2 in the AFC.
Absolutely,
and we should be disappointed that if they're not.
Mm-hmm. I agree, and I go back to what you said at the start. I don't think we talk about the return to it enough, and how well and how good he was playing last year, and how dominant he was at. He was the best player in that defense before getting hurt, which is a scary thought considering how good that defense was. And so to get him and Hayward back is going to be huge for sub-package football, for your 2-4-5 nickel, for your 2-3-6 dime defense. And so I'm really excited to have him back, and that'll help alleviate.
You pick your poison with those 4 up front right now, right?
Yeah. I mean, you got 4 studs up front, with Hayward, Tuitt, Dupree, and Watt. You got to do single blocks on a couple of those guys, and they're going to win those matchups more often than not.
So yeah, I mean that we expect that defense to be fine. I mean, and right out to shoot at that. The only thing that can hamper that unit, knock on wood, is getting injury ravaged. Mm-hmm. And obviously we'll watch how the backup inside linebacker spot or the sub package spot comes along here, and obviously the nose tackle spot as we move along too. I mean, you're not going to get through any offseason by not losing a piece or a part here or there, right? Mm-hmm. So right. I mean, if this group can stay healthy for the most part, especially up front, I'd much, and hopefully none of this happens, I'd much rather lose a back end piece than I would a front end piece personally.
Yeah, I think it's just easier to minimize that and hide it better. But and I just like the continuity for this defense too. Most of these guys returning, especially in the secondary, rare continuity there. I'll have to look into that kind of history a little bit later in the offseason. But credit to Peter Schrager. I think had a really just intelligent comment. Went through the whole defense. Even mentioned Mike Hilton in the slot. So just kudos to him for I think offering some very highbrow analysis.
Good analysis for a change from major media. And look, I mean, this offense, the 2019 offense didn't do that defense some favors in certain situations.
Underselling it.
Turning that football over as well too. So I mean that and I keep going back. Just as much as I like nailing, getting on and pushing that adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. Boy, that takeaway stat too. That 24 25. You got to have those takeaways in the NFL, and I think that's been proven over the last 2 decades as far as teams going and making the playoffs and competing for a Super Bowl. You got to be able to take the football away, and obviously the bigger the gap is in your turnover differential there, which unfortunately wasn't as big of a gap as you would like to have seen it last year. Would bend back and keep that offense on the field and putting up points in the red zone more often. All that's, the offense can help the defense.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Dave, last thing I want to talk about before we get to some reader emails. This is an article from the other day. This was Matthew wrote about it from Aaron Schatz over at Football Outsiders. And we've mentioned this before, so this is not brand new information, but to kind of put a bow on 2019, the Steelers, again, among the league's worst when it comes to play action and productivity off play action. They were ranked for the 4th straight year 32nd in play action usage, and one of the few teams that were worse off when they used play action as opposed to not using it. So it's been the same story there. So it's not just the quarterback play. Though obviously that was a factor last season, but it just seems like for whatever reason Pittsburgh cannot figure out play action.
I just don't. I mean, look, I understand. Look, I mean, a lot of teams around the league use shotgun, right? I mean, very few quarterbacks take a bulk of the snaps, up under center these days. But with that, you can still run play action out of shotgun, and attempt to free. My big thing is, man, I come from the school of, does play action help your running game? Does a good running game help play action? I don't believe that. But I do believe that if you run play action enough and can, in a couple plays in there, get a defense taking a step forward or getting that second level linebacker or safety freezing in their tracks or taking a false step in there can be a difference in a big play. And we've seen Ben Roethlisberger over the years be great off of play action, whether it be under center play action or whether it be in shotgun play action. On top of it there. So yeah, I've always had, the last couple seasons, had a hard time coming to grips why we don't see more of it out of this offense. And look, this goes back before Randy Fichtner as well too. So
sure, they're just not good at it. That's I guess the reason why you don't see it. They're just not good at it.
They're not good. They're not productive with it, or just not good carrying it out. The actual act of it.
I think both. I think one leads to the other. If you don't sell it, well, you probably don't get the results that you want. I mean, that's just what the numbers that Football Outsiders is posting, that they're just significantly worse when they use play action than when they don't. So I don't know the exact reason for that, but they just don't do it because they don't do it well.
Yeah, I think they just. I don't think they do it enough to know whether or not they do it well.
Well, the numbers say that they don't do it. Maybe it's a sample size thing, but if you look at the DVOA, rating, basically the outcome of those plays, they're very negative.
Remember that play against Denver a couple years ago that Grimble fumbled on? Wasn't that play action?
It was, I think. I guess that one didn't have a good outcome, but not the play caller's fault. I know, but
right.
I mean, these are the numbers. The numbers say that they're just not good at it. I mean, that's. I'm not. Don't shoot the messenger here.
Do you want to see more of it?
I want to see pistol. I've been banging that pistol, table for a while now, because I think that really is that good blend between getting Ben away from center while still creating downhill run action, which is better for play action, better for the run game in general, and gives you some more variety. I mean, they did a little bit of it last year, I think, but they just never have done enough to my liking.
Okay.
And also, I don't think it's going to change. I just think that they're just not going to use play action.
You think just Ben just doesn't like it, or what?
I think
it's a Ben thing, or?
I think that I know that you can run play action out of shotgun. It's more effective under center. I think we both agree to that. And that with Ben's lack of mobility in his age, he wants to play out of the gun more often. And I just don't think it's really in Ben's wheelhouse to take his eyes off the defense, to work under center more often. And that's just the reason why they don't do it. That's my guess.
Someone needs to point blank ask him,
Well, I'm sure Feetner would just give the boilerplate answer of, well, we do it.
Oh, ask Ben. What do you think?
Well,
yeah.
He's not going to. I don't know.
You don't know if you don't ask him.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not opposed to asking him. I just don't know what he would say. He probably would just say, we use it some, and it works sometimes it does. I don't know. I don't think you get a great answer out of him for that. He's not going to say that, I don't like play action. I refuse to use it. All right, Dave, let's get to some reader emails to close out today's show.
All right, let's see what we have here. Let me pull up the email box here. Uh-oh, Bo Lawson's back and he's mad again.
No.
Bo says, hey, hammer home the rookie class for the Rats. Won't have an easy time getting playing time either. Not just the Steelers. Too negative. We're too negative. Bo Lawson doesn't like any of our analysis. He writes in saying we do a bad job, but he still listens.
Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for writing.
I don't know, Bo. I don't know. Maybe we're not the show for you. Let's see here. What else do we have here? Let me go to Ryan. Writes in. Hey guys, I've heard you toss around various player comps, some not so flattering. Dave, I guess
John Baldwin.
Getting to the Jonathan Baldwin. Like it or not, Jonathan Baldwin is the comp for him from coming out of college. Some not so flattering. I was messing around looking at combine numbers and I stumbled upon Darren Waller. I think they have the similar play styles and that they both excel at contested catches and have deceptive speed. Just my 2 cents. Love the show. First one is Claypool. Yeah, I mean, look, there's some comparison there, but I think you got to take it beyond. I think you got to take it beyond underwear Olympic comparables as well too. And I mean, Waller to me is just not the kind of the contested catcher that Claypool or Jonathan Baldwin was, to be honest with you. I get it. I mean, they're both kind of those hybrid type of players. So I definitely kind of get that there too. I mean, it's a fair one, Ryan, I guess. But I really think the two players coming out of college, because Baldwin, to me, I remember him making a lot of contested catches and a lot of those things down the sideline, and his other bread and butter, I think, was those the long post and the underneath crossers as well too. So that's really where look. I mean, I'm not saying that people say, well, you throw that comparison out there that's who he's going to become. No, I'm just trying to say that with the two players coming out of college, that to me is the best comparison.
Yeah, that's fair. It's just tough. I've said this before. It's just tough to find a comp for Claypool because it's such a rare body type, such a rare testing kind of guy. I still go Alshon Jeffrey, but I've heard a million comps, and your Baldwin one I understand, and I think a lot of the comps out there do make some level of sense.
Boy, the deeper I get into, and I got another game contextualization coming up on Claypool today against Boston College. That's on the heels of yesterday being his game against Navy. We see a little something else, I think. I mean, not hugely different, not something that we didn't know about Claypool, obviously. But this Boston College game, I think what you're going to see in it is that catch radius. Just how large that regular, and I'm not talking about back shoulder, contested catch, sideline kind of catch radius. I'm talking about just general overall kind of reach catch radius. His touchdown against Boston College, you really see a nice full extension there with him being able to reach out and pluck that thing out of the air there. And one of his other catches is over there on the left sideline where he has to go down for a football there. So I'm always kind of looking in these things to see if I learn a little something new about a player as I go along there. So he didn't have, I think he had 6 or 7 catches against Boston College. Probably not, definitely not as impressive of a game as it was against Navy that he had 4 touchdowns in that game. But I think you learn a little something new about Claypool by watching the game breakdown against Boston College that I have going up today here. Jelani is back right in. Hey, Dave and Alex, hope all is well with you guys, and you guys are staying safe. You guys continue to carve out great content. My question is regarding the depth of the Steelers defense. Would it be better to plug in Ulysees at nose tackle, being that he has experience in the system, and go after maybe another coverage safety or an inside linebacker as depth behind Minka and Edmonds and Bush and Williams is razor thin? Or would you go after someone like Damon Harrison or Mike Daniels to plug in the nose tackle position? Although they might not be the same players, can still provide any team with the 300 or more snaps the teams will play on base defense, ? Looking at the schedule outside of the AFC North, NFC East, and AFC South feature top-tier running backs requiring the front seven to be great to be successful this year. Thank you for taking out the time to answer my question. Keep up the good work. All right, go ahead.
I subscribe to the Colbert approach of you probably want to go through camp and see what you have, evaluate your own roster before the outside options start playing a factor. That's generally how the Steelers have done it. I think it's more likely that they would add a safety than a nose tackle. I think that they have at least enough options at nose tackle, and they have 6 guys who are very likely to make the 53, that they'll just figure out some combination to work somebody inside for better or for worse. So I think it's more likely that they would add to safety, but I'm certainly not opposed to adding to either group because I think either group is worth adding to.
Yeah, cheap. Jelani, think cheap, and then you can add as much as you want.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, I don't think we would be surprised to see either, and we said as much, defensive tackle earlier in the show, safety, maybe even an inside linebacker,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I think for inside linebacker, for example, I think it's just based off how UG3 looks. If he looks good and you're happy with his performance, you probably stand pat. If he struggles, gets hurt, whatever the case is, then maybe you look to add somebody. So I think that's why you go through camp and you evaluate your own 90, and then you make a decision from there.
And one other position that's offensive side of football outside of those that we just named there that I could maybe see would be kind of a full-fledged number 2 kind of blocking tight end.
Yeah. Hey, what's John Gilmore doing these days?
Yeah. Because look, I mean, you got Zach Gentry, but he wasn't great during his rookie season. You would have to, and I think you have to see what he has during training camp, mm-hmm. and see where he's at in the process there. And if you don't like what you see there, then I think you got to keep your eyes peeled for something better than what they brought in last year. That's for sure. You know
who their number 2 blocking tight end is? It's Zach Banner. That's their blocking tight
end.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm afraid of. All those snaps again. Handcuffing yourself to a tackle playing tight end.
Yeah, and if Banner were to win that right tackle job, I think it'd become Dotson's role. I think he would excel in that 6 offensive lineman role. There's obviously a lot of drawbacks to it, but I don't think they're going to add because they just view as, okay, if we need to go block a 4-3 end, we'll just have a 6th offensive lineman do it.
They went out and got Vanette last year, and we see how that played out there. Obviously, if they did go out and get another tight end again this offseason, it would be one that would have to function mainly as a blocker and probably give you at least one phase of special teams play.
Yeah, I think they're going to stand pat because if they got Ebron, they got McDonald, Gentry's going to develop, and they got 6 offensive linemen to take care of the nitty-gritty run block and stuff.
Chris Bailey writes in. Chris is from England. Hi, Dave and Alex. Thanks for the great work and the whole Depot team puts in. The content has been first rate as always. It puts the national media to shame with their stupid, ill-informed comments about quarterbacks in particular. Your site and podcast are very welcome relief tough times we all find ourselves in at the moment. Thanks. I even subscribe to the ad-free version of the site, and I'm loving that even more than before. Thank you for that, Chris. Okay, to my question. I saw your early roster prediction didn't have Christian Scotland Williamson on it, even in the practice squad. Is this simply because you don't think Scotty will make the practice squad, or have the rules regarding international players changed since the new CBA came out? Look, at this point, if Scotty can make the practice squad or the 53, I think he can make. I don't think the rules limit any of that. I just think that as far as the practice squad, as far as being able to carry that extra guy, I think it's a 2-year program when it comes to those international guys. So the fact that they can, Here's a good hint at that is they're only carrying a 90-man roster now as opposed to a 91-man roster right now, which leads me to believe that there's not going to be the practice squad exemption for him should they want to use it this year as well too. So I haven't fully researched this, but I think it's a 2-year program with these guys as far as that exemption goes there. Now, as far as me not having them on my 53 or practice squad, I got to see more from him, Chris. And I mean, I don't see him in training camp like Alex does. But I have seen what limited play he's had during the preseason time so far, and that's all I have to go off of right now. So, yeah, it's true. I didn't have him on there. Does that mean that he can't? It's going to be an uphill battle for him to make the 53, plain and simple. It's going to probably take multiple injuries from that aspect, or him really showing something on special teams or as a blocker there. Can he make a practice squad? Yeah, I mean, just because I don't have him on my practice squad doesn't mean he can't. But I've got to see a lot more out of him this year during the preseason for me to be able to add him to my practice squad. Alex, where are you on him?
I'm basically with you, and to when you say that you need to see more out of him in the preseason, that they really just needs to see something out of him. He's been done really nothing in the preseason in his first 2 years. Now, in camp last year, there was improvement. He looked more comfortable, which you would expect, obviously, year 1 to year 2. He looked like he belonged. He was actually involved in the offense a little bit, caught a couple passes, made a couple plays that, brought some level of excitement or at least something of note. But there's still a long ways to go overall profile. So, yeah, I'm with you. It's a long battle. Not going to say it's impossible, but the path to 53 is very tough right now. They got Kevin Rader on the practice squad who they liked last year. So this is make or break for Scotty, and he's still got to show a lot of improvement, got to make more impact plays.
Yeah, and by all means, we root for kind of those kind of guys. It's hard not to root for those kind of guys.
My favorite play, one of my favorite plays in camp last year was like a 20-yard touchdown he caught down the seam, and it was just great to see him be rewarded to have that kind of play and finally have that moment just to do something in camp because he works so hard for it. So I'm rooting for the guy. It's just a tough path.
So, Chris, look, nothing says that he can't wind up. I just think the path to the 53 is going to be extremely tough. So I think it is kind of practice squad or bust for him this year. And all eyes will be, Alex will definitely let us know what's going, assuming training camp's open for him. Let us know what progress he makes there. And we'll obviously be watching him throughout the preseason games, assuming those things go off.
He caught four passes last year for 53 yards and a touchdown in training camp. I think he had maybe 1 or 2 receptions the year before, and I didn't do yards back then, but they were for dump off passes. So a little improvement, but he's got to be a much more consistent figure, invisible guy in the passing game.
Dennis Diaz writes in, what are your thoughts on Tomlin moving to general manager or a combination of head coach, GM, and Khan taking over a portion of GM responsibilities when Colbert retires?
That's some 1920s George Halas stuff you're talking about. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that I think that Tomlin will remain as head coach. Let's keep the responsibility there, keep the focus there. There were things that during the regular season where Colbert might be doing scouting trail stuff, where obviously Tomlin's not going to be able to do that. So I think you're trying to do Khan still as the cap guy, but kind of has the title now as GM. I don't think that's going to fly. I think that in terms of Colbert replacements, in terms of in-house, the top two, obviously everyone talks about Omar Khan. I still think Brandon Hunt should be the next GM of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I do as well, and I think getting back to kind of Tomlin, time and time again you hear him talk about how he loves the teaching aspect of it. I don't see Tomlin having any kind of probably wants to be kind of front office kind of guy. I think he either wants to coach probably or I doubt he wants to get too much into the scouting end of it. I think he just likes the teaching aspect of it more.
Yeah, I think he likes that day-to-day operation of being the head coach. And again, I think it's just messy to try to make him in this dual kind of role. They'll just hire a GM, and it'll probably come from in-house. Although, it doesn't have to. I mean, Kevin Colbert didn't come in-house, so we'll see what happens.
All right, Chuck Griffith writes in inside linebacker ratings. What are your thoughts on where Devin Bush would have been selected in the 2020 draft? The Ravens sat at 28, selected Patrick Queen. The Steelers traded 2019. Number 20 and number 52, and 2020 number 83 to move up to get Devin Bush. Was Devin Bush an elite prospect as compared to maybe Patrick Queen being a good to great prospect, or the Ravens just got lucky?
I know neither of us really like playing this game too much. I'm just happy that they got Devin Bush instead of keep trying to find him. I think he would have been right up there with Kenneth Murray and Patrick Queen, and maybe not at Isaiah Simmons level, but right around there. And I know some people say, "Oh, you shouldn't have traded for Devin Bush because you could have gotten inside linebacker this year." Well, you just don't know what's going to happen. And then B, I love getting Devin Bush in his second year in such a critical year for this team right now, as opposed to being a rookie where they're still taking your rookie lumps. He's not an every down kind of guy. So I like getting that guy early. So now that instead of having a rookie this year, especially in this year where it's going to be so tough for rookies to make an impact, this guy's ready to go, ready to be the guy right away with a healthy Ben. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, and I guess it's a better way to frame it because, look, I mean, what happens if you don't draft, if you don't trade up and get Devin Bush and you sit and wait? Odds are he wasn't going to make it to you last year.
Yeah, I think the idea is, could you just not have taken an inside linebacker last year and taken one in this class when the class was better? I think that's the point.
So what would your defense have been last year? Barron
being the guy.
Yeah.
I guess his point as well, it was a lost season anyway. I mean, this is all hindsight driven, which not how this stuff works, but I guess that's the point they're trying to make.
Objects in the rearview mirror may appear closer than what they are, right?
Something like that. Yeah, again, I'm just happy that you got a really talented player in the draft, and I don't try to overthink that stuff too much. But to the point about where he would have rated, I think he would have been above Patrick Queen. Remember, Patrick Queen was basically a one-year guy that didn't even start this year, so there was more unknown with Queen. I think he's a talented player. Baltimore got a good pick. I'm sure Bo's going to be mad about us talking about Baltimore getting a good pick, but I'm just happy that you got Devin Bush.
And look, I mean, how tough is it going to be for Patrick Queen to get on the field early this year for Baltimore? Or
sure.
if they do, what level of mistakes what level of growing pains is he going to have to go through here?
Yeah. I mean, again, that's why I'm happy to get not only just Devin Bush the talent, but to get him in year 2 ready to go. You trust him fully. He's not fully integrated in your defense. That's going to be incredibly valuable for this defense.
Let's see here. I think we've got them all, Alex. I think we've made it through this batch of the questions here.
All right.
Double check.
Good show.
Yeah, I think so overall. Okay. Well, let's see. What do we got coming on the site? I got more contextualizations on Claypool at some point. Probably, I don't know if it's going to be this week or not because of the Claypool work I got, but it's coming soon in the next week or two. We're going to take a close look at McFarland and what he can and can't do from a pass protection standpoint. What do you got coming up, Alex?
Article today on the Steelers showing all the confidence in Mason Rudolph. Now he has to prove it. Sometime later this week, I'm thinking Thursday, I'll also have a video on McFarland in his vision, the bring, bang, bounce reads in the zone schemes and kind of his vision and some breakdowns for that and whatever else I have coming. I'm not sure yet.
Boy, he can get to that edge, can he?
Yeah, I mean, that speed is as timed. I mean, there are some guys that run 4.4 something that don't play like that, but he runs to that time speed.
The fun thing about doing these deep dives into players too is you come across there's guys that just end up jumping out on the tape on you in some of this. And Notre Dame, that Braden Lindsey kid, I don't know how much you know about him, that Notre Dame player. That guy has got some jets on him. For sure. And in this game against BC, he takes one of these end arounds and takes it to the house around the edge there. But I think the thing that stuck out the most to me is there's this 6'1", I think he's listed at 6'1", cornerback for Boston College, Brandon Sebastian. Remember that name? I think he was a sophomore, I think, last year for Boston College. This kid almost tracked, and I know almost doesn't matter, but the fact that you know how quick Braden Lindsey is, and for this kid, Brandon Sebastian, to almost hawk him down but before he gets in the end zone is quite fantastic to watch on tape. So keep both those names in the back of your head. Braden Lindsey out of Notre Dame and Brandon Sebastian out of Boston College.
Doing a little early scouting. I like it, Dave.
Yeah, like I said, sometimes you can't help. You're watching this college tape, and I'm easily distracted by tinsel. Rest in peace, by the way, to Jerry Stiller, passed away.
I know. 2020, man.
Huge Seinfeld fan I am. And
I love King of Queens. That was a great show.
And King of Queens, and definitely great. Very, very funny guy, and passed away at 90-something. He got his money's worth, 90-something years old. But I'm always distracted sometimes by the tinsel that goes on in tape, and oftentimes I'll get a quarter into it and think, what the heck am I watching here? And I have to go back to what I missed because I'm not watching what I'm supposed to watch there because I get distracted by another player. But those two players, Braden Lindsey out of Notre Dame and Brandon Sebastian, corner out of BC. Remember those names. But
I think it's always telling when those guys jump out. That was like McFarland for me last year, watching Durham and Gray, and then I see McFarland. I'm like, who is this guy? So I think that's always telling when someone jumps out at you when you're not even looking for that guy in the first place.
Well, I tell you, if Tomlin was watching that Notre Dame tape right now, they can't help but know who this Braden Lindsey kid is. I'll tell you that.
For sure.
All right. With that, let us. We'll be back on what today? What's today? Tuesday. We'll be back on Friday. Yeah. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, you can go to SteelersDepot.com and hit the donate button up right navigational bar. That'll take you to PayPal for a secure donation. We thank everybody who has donated and continues to donate on a regular basis. Also, if you like an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, you can go to the site, hit the ad-free button upright navigational bar, and for $25, you can have a year's calendar version of the ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. So until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.